Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapters 12, 13, and 14, Eirika route of Fire Emblem, the Sacred Stones. It is that time of year again, folks. It is starting to warm up outside, which means that it is a fucking furnace in my apartment. It is currently 49 degrees Fahrenheit outside of my apartment, in the outside world. And then I'm gonna go ahead and look over my thermostat. Let's see what the thermostat says. 81 degrees Fahrenheit in here. Now this isn't gonna be a problem anytime soon, but it does quickly reach like 90, closing in on 100 degrees in here. So production tends to slow down around that time because I literally I keep my AC running and my fan running almost constantly. You don't want to see what that does to my electric bill, but it's necessary. And I don't want to have those on in the background while I'm recording. But I also cannot sit here and record for 3 hours in 90 degrees with no fan or air conditioning. So usually I tend to slow down a little bit on recording episodes when it gets to be summertime. It's just something that I've noticed over the past couple of years. And yeah, this will probably be no exception, but 80 degrees is fine. I can handle that shit. It's not a big deal. So last episode, I asked you guys, which route did you guys play through first? Eirika route or Ephraim route on your first playthrough of FE8? So let me read the responses that I got. At Rock Me Amadeus on Blue Sky said Eirika's. I wanted to see more of Carcino. A lot of the best FE7 maps were in urban settings, and surely a merchant-centric nation means a lot of city levels? Boy, I was disappointed. Johanna Castle might be my favorite chapter in the game, though. So yeah, this is something that I didn't really touch on last episode. I made a note to talk about it, but I forgot about it. Eirika's route just fucking lies to you. So Eirika's route says that she's going to Rouston, and if you're actually interested in learning more about Rouston, then that's not that might be a sincere factor in picking Eirika's route, and the game is just lying. You're actually going to Carcino instead. But if you're interested in Carcino, which Drano here seemed to be, then yeah, that's a fairly reasonable assumption to make, right? But there's not really very many indoor or town maps in this game. It's really Chapter 5 and then a couple of castle maps. And that's it, which is a kind of a shame, because I do agree that some of the best maps in FE7 took place in towns, like the Lioness version of Four Fanged Offense, 17X obviously being a big one. Chapter 6 also with Chapter 7 of FE6. That was huge. Chapter 14 of Thracia. It's a lot of really, really good city maps. And this game just doesn't really have any that are really good maps in a city. It has Chapter 5, but Chapter 5 is just kind of fine. It's not amazing. And then over on Twitter, at Biozilla said, truth be told, I've only beaten Ephraim's route as I heard that the main antagonist characterization is more compelling there. I had started a second playthrough with the intention of exploring Eirika's route, but it got away from me. One day. And that's fair. Both Drano and Biozilla had answers that tied into something that popped up a couple of times. I did ask this question over to some of my friends on Discord, just because I don't normally go into those answers anymore. But I wanted to talk about it here because I felt like I wanted to just get a raw number count, basically see how many people said Ephraim, see how many people said Eirika. So there were more Ephraims than Eirikas, which did surprise me a little bit, but I can understand why. I'll read you a couple of the reasons that I saw from people. One person said Ephraim because he's cool, and I already played 8 chapters with Eirika. So wanting to go with Ephraim because they didn't know him that well, versus wanting to go with Eirika because they didn't know Ephraim very well. It's kind of two sides of the same coin there. They're acknowledging, yes, I don't know Ephraim very well, but that's interesting to me. I wanted to see and explore his new character rather than the one that I was already attached to. One person said Eirika because I thought I would be stuck with the 5X shitter brigade, which is pretty funny. Specifically assuming that Kyle and Ford would go with Ephraim regardless of what decision you made is actually a pretty reasonable assumption to make. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do that, but I get the reason behind it. I sort of talked about that last time. One person said Ephraim because I heard the ghost ship was funny, which is a fun reason. And then one other person followed that up with Ephraim because I think I think I thought the game was going smooth enough. I wanted to try the harder mode, but they never finished that playthrough. But they say it wasn't because of the difficulty. They just stopped, which is a relatable experience. Anyway, what I'm getting at here is that several of these responses, a couple of them not so much, but several of them, suggest something that I hadn't even considered in when I asked the question, which is that some people are going to have outside information. Some people are going to know that Ephraim's route is the harder route. Like, they're going to hear that reputation for Ephraim's route before they play the game or while they're playing the game. Some people are going to hear that you go to Carcino instead of routes that like Drano presumably made that choice knowing that that they were going to go to Carcino, which the game does not advertise to you. So, like, why would you know that before? But that's because, like, it's something that they probably just, like, picked up through cultural osmosis. And then Biozilla, same thing. Wanting to go with Ephraim route because they had heard that the main antagonist gets better characterization there. So that was a factor that I hadn't even considered. And most of the people who responded to the question did include some sort of external factor or information as the reason why, rather than anything that the game displayed or anything that had to do with the game itself. So I just think that's interesting. And it goes to show that I was being a little bit short-sighted in my question, and the scope of possible responses I thought I was going to get, which I just think is pretty interesting. Okay, so for this episode's question, I have an idea. I'm really trying to think if I want to save this for... I know exactly where I would use this if not here. And I think it would probably be in the Cindered Shadows DLC for Three Houses. But I'm not even sure if I'm going to do the DLC. I probably will, but I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to for any of these games and talk about them. But on the other hand, and then also, even if I do, I think I could probably come up with a different question. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and burn this here. Who is the biggest simp in Fire Emblem? Because I have I think it might be this guy. I think it might be this motherfucker in chapter 14. But you guys let me know who you think the biggest simp is. Or maybe not the biggest simp, but like, who do you think is like the most pathetic simp? Like the biggest loser out of all the simps in Fire Emblem. Because I think there's a good chance it's fucking Carlisle from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. But you guys let me know. I got to think about all the simps that I know of in Fire Emblem. Obviously, there's the one from Three Houses, which I mentioned. And there's even another simp in this game. So there's plenty of playable characters who are simps. You got like the womanizer archetype in every game. So yeah, let me know who's the biggest simp. I'm a Melee Kirby on Twitter or Blue Sky, and at turmoilpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, that's all. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our chapters for the episode, starting with chapter 12, which is called Village of Silence. If you remember from last time, Sala did they meet Sala last episode? I don't fucking remember. I think they did. Sala is escorting them through the mountains to get to Caer Pelin, which is where they're going to be able to continue through to Johanna. They're trying to get to Johanna to warn the queen about the sacred stones, all that shit. Yeah, they definitely met Sala at the end of last chapter, because I remember they had like Sala's at the beginning of this chapter, and he drops a really hard line, which is where he says, "Material wealth brings strife. We crave not such things," or something like that. Where he talks about like how like I think Eirika brings up how far away the village is from like society, and he just says like, yeah, fuck that. And then some monsters show up, and we have to fight them. That's the entire chapter. There's really not that much to it. It's a filler chapter through and through. But it's also bad. I really don't like this chapter. It is a route map. For some fucking reason, it wouldn't really make sense to have a monster map be. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense, because they do some seas maps for the monsters in later games, or in later chapters. I don't know why this one is a route map, because there's like a throne like or a gate structure towards the end of the map that you could have just made this a C's and it would have been like a million times better. But no, it's a route map and you have to deal with all the fucking like reinforcements coming, and there's gargoyles and excuse me, the gargoyles are little bitches and they're up on the mountains and you can't fight them unless they come to you, or in like you're using like a fucking super strong Vanessa or something like that, I guess. You don't have Cormag at this point, so you can't use him. It's not fun. I don't like this map. I think this map sucks. Weirdly, I don't know if I would describe this as the hardest map. It's the map that took me the most amount of tries. I had to reset this map like 4 times. It's because I have really bad spatial awareness. This is actually something that I've talked about in previous episodes. I'm not very good at Fire Emblem, and I made this very clear, but I'm not good about it in like a very specific way where I am just like really bad at spatial awareness. So I will like just not be able like to process in my mind. I'm making it sound like like it's like a mental thing, and I'm just dumb. But I'm not always able to like process it in my mind. Oh yes, this character is in range of this guy. I've gotten better at it over the years, but it's still something that I struggle with a lot. And this happened to me a lot in this chapter where I was in really tight, narrow pathways. I will give this chapter credit. It's a cool like setup where you're like traveling through this canyon and there's like choke points and like your movement is very heavily restricted. There's like not a lot of places to go, not a lot of room to maneuver around in, but yet the enemies that you're fighting have a lot more mobility and a lot more flexibility. And I feel like in a different context, in fact, in chapters, I think in chapters I've already talked about, but certainly chapters that we've yet to talk about, I think this type of map design has been used to really good effect. I think chapter 7 of FE6 I think did this with the wyverns, right? Those wyverns are notorious, and I mean part of it is that they're extremely strong and bulky. But the other thing is that because you're moving, there's like terrain and forests and narrow pathways on the lower half of the map, and they're just able to fly up and down in every fucking way to get you. And I think that that's a cool concept, but for whatever reason here, it just didn't click with me. I didn't think it was like, I think that maybe it was like a little bit too restrictive, or maybe it was because, I'm using a lot of bad units this playthrough. I like had to reset because like Tana died, and Tana's not like a bad unit, but she's definitely frail. She's not able to take she's definitely not able to 1v1 the gargoyles, that's for sure. At least not like she's able to 1v1 like a couple gargoyles, but not like there's like 12, 15 of them in this map. She's not able to handle all that on her own. And then, I have like healers and Marissa I'm also trying to train. So it wasn't a great showing of characters for me. So like on that end, I can kind of understand that maybe it's my own fault. But still, I didn't have a good time with it. But that's basically like the gist of the map. I skipped over talking about like the units that you get on this map because I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there right away. But yeah, we get a couple of recruitable characters this time around. We have Sala. He joins right at the start of the map. He's actually force deployed, and he's very good. I've compared him to Pent in the past, and I think that that's maybe been a little bit misleading. I always thought that he was like about as good as Pent, and I don't know why. Like Pent is in FE7 is like one of the single best characters in the entire game. Like if you're not factoring in availability, he might just be the best character in the game in a vacuum. I mean like Marcus is amazing obviously, but like Pent just like kills everything, and he's so dodgy. He has A stabs at base. So maybe saying that Sala is comparable to Pent was a little bit misleading, but I do still think he's very good. He has C stabs at base, which is not enough to use Warp, obviously, but it is a good start. It's the same, staff rank as Mulder. Obviously Mulder joins a lot earlier than Sala, of course, but whereas Mulder really only has staff utility to speak of, maybe like a little bit of combat when you promote him. Sala, he has really good combat. He has A rank in Animatomes, and I think like B rank in Light, which isn't super relevant, but like maybe if you want like weapon triangle advantage over Dark Mages, that's something to bring up. And the C staves gives him a lot of utility, and he can still very reliably get to get to A rank. He's a really good warper because his base magic is pretty high. And overall, he's in an easier game than Pent also. So I don't think it's like a night and day difference. But upon reflection, Pent I don't think Sala is quite as good relative to FE8 as Pent was to FE7. Although Sala also joins earlier, but that's a little bit harder of a comparison to make because FE7 is longer than FE8 by like a lot, but then also there's like Lin mode that if you cut that out, because that might not even count, you can skip Lin mode anyway, so I don't know. Point is, Sala's very good. That's really all you need to know about it. He's definitely one of the reasons that you would go Eirika route even, because like you don't get him until chapter 15 on Ephraim route, and he's like a really, really solid unit all around. You have a similar unit in Ephraim route that you don't get until chapter 15 at Eirika route, but I think it's a matter of preference which one of those two is better, and I mean, obviously it's a matter of which route you take. I like Sala a little bit more than that other character. I think they're both excellent, but I think Sala is just like more fun to use, if nothing else. That's how I feel anyway. And then the other character we get is Lewyn. We don't actually get Lewyn until we visit a house partway through the map. He might also join if you beat the map without visiting that house. I don't entirely remember. If that is the case, then you probably shouldn't visit the house at all, or at the very least, you should like wait until all of the enemies are cleared out, because Lewyn is garbage. He is our last trainee unit. And his stats are terrible, and he has 4 movement in this map, which already restricts your movement super heavily, and as I mentioned, has flying units coming down and raining hellfire on you, and there's fucking gargoyles. He's gonna get one shot and doubled by all the gargoyles. So yeah, definitely don't like try to use Lewyn in this map. That is a terrible, terrible idea. This is maybe like the worst first impression they could have given Lewyn. At least like Amelia and Ross, especially Ross, but even Amelia a little bit, like you could train kind of on their join maps. There's like archers that you could use to like box in and give Amelia a couple levels. Ross has the hatchet, and the enemies are still pretty weak at that point, so you can hit pretty reliably. Lewyn doesn't have anything like that. Lewyn is like an active liability in his map, even more so than the other 2 trainees are. So Lewyn's trainee class is Pupil. He uses magic, which is pretty good. That is a legitimate advantage that he has because magic is very accurate and hits on resistance, so it tends to do more damage than physical attacks. So that is a legitimate reason to like, that feeding him kills isn't as bad as it could otherwise be. But I mean, it's like I'm splitting hairs here. I'm comparing like, a couple points of damage. Lewyn is terrible. There's absolutely no reason to use him unless you just feel like training a trainee, which is fine. I am using Lewyn this playthrough. I've used Lewyn on many playthroughs in the past. And there's a couple things specifically about Lewyn that I think are pretty interesting, so I'll talk about them here. So at level 10, Lewyn has the option to promote into a mage. Or a dark mage. And dark mage is I'll talk about mage first, I guess, because like sages are a little bit like they're not in very high demand in this game. You get a bunch of them. Not only do you get a pre-promoted sage in Sala, but then there's also like 3 other characters that can promote into sage. Archer, Lute, and Molder can all promote into sage. So like out of all of the options that you have for sage, I think that, or out of all the options that Lewyn has, I think sage is like probably the least interesting. It is for that reason though that I am actually going with sage for this playthrough, because I have never actually done sage Lewyn before. I think it is the only class that I have never made Lewyn. I've made him all 4 of his other classes, and yes, I said 4 because if you like, dark mage and mage do not have any overlap, right? Like knight and cavalier, which are Amelia's promotion options, have overlap in Great Knight, and fighter and pirate have overlap in warrior. But mage and dark mage do not have any overlap whatsoever. So you actually have 4 different final class options for Lewyn. I haven't actually even mentioned the super trainee classes yet, but I'll talk about that another time. Maybe towards the end of the game. Anyway, I lost the plot a little bit there. So I'm doing Sage Lewyn this playthrough, and I think he's fun. I think the Sage design is like super cool, and Lewyn's color palette is like maybe my favorite in the entire game. The blue and the red are like such a good combination. They pop out on each other so well. And I think he's gonna look awesome no matter what class that you put him in. But I think that the blue and red in particular suit Sage very well. It feels like, I don't know. It just looks cool to me. There have been a lot of jokes made about him having the blue and red even as like a dark mage and a druid, which is like funny. That's very appealing in its own way because you wouldn't expect a druid to look like that. But it also kind of like feels like a weird aesthetic. It's more of a joke aesthetic than anything else. But I can respect it. If you enjoy making you in a dark mage class. Anyway, the other promotion option you have for mage is Mage Knight, which is definitely the better of the two if you just want another anime user. There are a couple of other characters that can promote into Mage Knight. You get Lute, who can promote into Mage Knight, and actually La Rochelle can also promote into Mage Knight. So those aren't in super high demand either. But, if you want another one, that's fine. Or if you just don't feel like using Lute, or if you want to not use La Rochelle or make her into something else, all of those are completely viable options. And then, of course, as a dark mage, he can promote into a druid, which is a class that we've seen a couple times before. That's the standard dark mage promotion. Technically, this is our first character that can become a summoner. Noel is kind of the place where you would expect to talk about this, but technically on both routes, you recruit Ewan first. So, technically, if you stood there and grinded in the Tower of Volney for a while, you could get a summoner before you even recruit Noel. Which I think is pretty funny. So Summoner is a class that I'm going to talk a little bit. I think it's better if I save talking about it more for when we get Noel, because I am eventually making Noel into a summoner, and I want to talk a little bit about that from like when I actually promote Noel into a summoner there. It is in terms of the choice that you can make between Sage and Mage, or between Summoner and Druid, I should say. I mean, I toyed around with making Ewan a druid in this playthrough. Or, sorry, I toyed around with making Noel a druid in this playthrough, actually. Because I go Summoner every single time. But at the end of the day, Summoner is just so iconic to FE8. It's like one of the most creative things that the game does. It is like so interesting. Technically, can you guys guess where I'm going with this? Technically, Sacred Stones was not the first game to have a summoner class, or have like an ability similar to summoning. In, say it with me now, Fire Emblem Gaiden, you could have some of the healers, the clerics, got access to a spell called Invoke. In fact, I think maybe all of them did, and those options were like really, really cool because you had each cleric had a different class that they could summon. You got Genny's early on, and she summoned like shitty soldiers. Tatiana's was like a little bit like, it's like towards, I mean, you recruit Tatiana pretty late. But you get her invoke spell like pretty quickly after you promote her, and she summons Pegasus Knights, which is pretty cool. But then Silks, if you put a lot of investment into Silk, you get Silk to a very high level. She eventually gets Invoke for Dread Fighters, which is sick as hell. It's so cool. Anyway, so technically, it's not a completely original idea to FE8. There are characters in previous Fire Emblem games that behaved similarly, but it's just one of those things that, like, when you think about FE8 and things that make FE8 stand out, you gotta think about the Summoner class, right? It's such an iconic part of the game, and it leads to a lot of, like, really cool decision making, a lot of really fun moments with dicking around with summons. And it's just like a really creative idea that I really enjoy messing around with every time I play through this game. So the fact that I'm promoting Noel into Summoner, despite the fact that I've done it every single time that I played through this game, should really indicate, like, I'm one of those people that really values variety and mixing things up. I like to use different teams and promote to different classes as I go through each of the games. But, like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to not use the Summoner for the playthrough where I'm supposed to be showing off FE8 in its entirety. So, anyway, that's enough about Ewan. He's bad. If you really want to promote him, the nice thing about Summoner is that if you don't feel like using Noel, or if you just want a second Summoner, Summoner is one of those classes where, like, I think you really could benefit from two of them, because having two summons active at the same time sounds like it could open up some fun strategies, or just, like, just seems like a fun idea in general. But I think like probably looking at it objectively, Mage Knight is the best just because you get a horse. But that's boring, and I don't care about that. I just want to use cool classes that I like, and Summoner I really like, but also I really like Sage, so I'm gonna make Ewan into a Sage. My Ewan, by the end of Eirika mode, I'm probably continuing from Ephraim route, as I've said. But from my Ewan at the end of Eirika route was actually kind of cracked. He got some really good level ups, so maybe if I decide to continue from Ephraim route or from Eirika route, I might do that just so that my Ewan is good. Okay, so once you clear the monsters out of the map, the map's over, and they just continue on their journey. It's not like, at least have the decency to be like, if you're gonna be this boring shit ass map that's annoying and frustrating, at least have the decency to like do something with the story or to progress the plot in some meaningful way. It's literally they're just on their way to the village and some monsters stop them and they have to fight the monsters and they beat the monsters and nothing changes. They just continue on to the village. It's so fucking pointless. There is something that they do a couple times with Eirika in this chapter that I really am not a big fan of, and I feel like I never used to do this. I don't know what it is, if I'm just more conscious now, or if I'm just noticing it for the first time. Maybe I've gone woke. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm woke now. But they just keep fucking doing dumb shit with Eirika, and I don't like it. They're getting to this village, and I think this comes at the beginning of the chapter and also at the end of the chapter, where Eirika, only Eirika, is like about apparently ready to pass out. They've been like pressing on really hard. They've been traveling a long distance over a short amount of time. And that's like all fine. That's all well and good. But why specifically Eirika? Why can't Inez also be getting tired? Or like the fucking horses, for all I care? Like, why does it have to be Eirika? What is this? I don't understand. I don't know why they insist on making her like, and it's like, not, this isn't a big deal, right? Like, Eirika getting tired isn't a problem. But it's like part of the pattern that I'm noticing with how they're treating Eirika. They just don't want to make her as cool or as capable as Ephraim is. And part of that issue is that they just suck Ephraim's dick constantly, but that's a whole other issue. I'm not a big fan of that. It's just kind of another thing to add to the pile of things that I don't like about how this game treats Eirika, once Ephraim gets reintroduced into the story. But Ephraim's not even around, so I was kind of hoping that it would stop, but apparently not. They meet an old woman here. She is apparently the elder of the village. That's basically all that we know about her. But she gives some lore, some context to the world that the characters don't already know about. She basically like introduces them to the concept of the Manicheets, although she doesn't like that word. Apparently that word is like considered blasphemous. But they refer to the Manicheets as the Great Dragon or the Great Dragons or something like that. And they were a race of dragons that helped humanity during the first war against the Demon King, and even to this day, the dragons that still exist, I don't know if there's more than one or if it's just like Morva and Myr. I mean, I guess that's two right there, but like I don't know if there's more than just Morva and Myr. They still stand watch over Darkling Woods to this day. I find the insistence on not using the word Manicheet to be really funny, because I'm pretty sure Myr introduces herself as a Manicheet, or even if it's Ephraim, like Myr is there and Myr doesn't seem to give a shit. So it's just like this funny thing to me that like, they insist on holding them up on this pedestal, even though they themselves don't seem to actually care all that much, or at least Myr doesn't. So Sala decides to come along with us, mostly just as a matter of convenience, because he needs to go find Myr, and Myr is with Grotto, because they have no idea where Myr is until Eirika tells them that she's traveling with Ephraim, and Ephraim is making his way through Grotto. So that's the plan, is Sala's going to come along with them. Geographically, this doesn't make any fucking sense, because, I mean, I guess maybe Eirika doesn't know what route he took to get into Grotto, but like, it's just on the complete opposite side of Grotto, so I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So the next chapter is called Hamel Canyon. However, before we actually start that chapter, I did take a detour here because we just got Ewan, and I'm planning on using Ewan, and I know better than to try to just level him up in the chapters and expect that to go fine. We only have 2 chapters left of Eirika mode. and I'm resetting to Ephraim mode anyway. So I figured it probably wouldn't even be worth my time to even try to do that. So instead, what I did is I went to try to do a skirmish battle. Now here's the thing about these skirmish battles. I've never actually like properly done one before. I think I've probably done like a couple, but it's not something that I regularly do when I play through this game. Because if I want to train, I just go to the tower instead. And I didn't want to go to the tower initially, not for like any particular reason. I think I just wanted to save all the maps until I eventually got to the episode of the podcast where I'm talking about all the maps, so that I could just kind of like go in and do it all in one and get my opinions on them. But I ended up changing my mind because these skirmish battles are like actually pretty fucking hard. The main thing about them is that a lot of FE5 or a lot of FE8 maps are in open fields without a whole lot of terrain to take advantage of. And I guess there's like terrain to take advantage of, but there's not a lot of like ways that you can use the environment to your advantage, right? Like there's very few choke points in some of these maps. The one that I tried to do was the map in chapter 6, which I will admit was pretty novel, seeing chapter 6 without Fog of War, and you can kind of like see that map in like the full scope of that map, which is pretty cool. I mean, I guess like you could see the whole map anyway, but it's cool to see like all the enemies out on the map in that chapter. But like there's just so much open space and you just get attacked from all sides, and there's like some pretty strong enemies that come down. I had to deploy like a couple of strong units just to help out with the fighting, and even then they like I was having a hard time. So I decided to just say fuck it and go do the Tower of Volney instead. I did the first chapter or the first map in the Tower of Volney like 3 or 4 times, both to get Lewyn up to level 10. That was part of it. I also grinded a few levels for him, like as a mage, I think. Although I did most of that training in the Eirika route maps after. But then I also got a couple extra levels on Tana so that she could promote. And then I think also Marissa I trained a little bit, although I didn't end up promoting her because I didn't even have the promotion item for her actually until chapter 14. There's one. Oh, and I promoted Naomi also, and she has really above average stats. She's like +3 in speed, I want to say, something like that, and like a +2 in strength. She's still terrible, which just goes to show how fucking terrible she is. But she's very, very fast, and she helped out a lot in some of the coming chapters, which is pretty nice. But she just doesn't do that much damage. The Colm support is really helping a lot because that increases her damage output. Colm is pretty fun as well. He's got some really high crit. But unfortunately, he's not critting as much as I would like him to, or proccing silencer for that matter. But it is what it is. So anyway, that's the only update I have to provide on the tower. I don't have much to say about the first one. Again, we're going to talk about all of the floors of the tower once we have access to all of them, which will be in approximately the 3rd episode after this one, not counting SSS episodes. So take that as you will. And yeah, that's it. So let's go ahead and actually get started on chapter 13, Hamel Canyon. We finally made it into Johanna. We are now officially, formally in Johanna. We have crossed the border. Unfortunately, Grotto is there as well, and we're going to have to fight them. However, before we get to that, we see we cut to an enemy POV where Volter tells Cormag about Glenn, and he lies and says that Eirika is the one who killed him. Volter says, I saw it with my own eyes. He came down right at the last second, just as Eirika was plunging her sword into his chest or something like that. And Cormac buys it hook, line, and sinker for some reason. I don't really get why he would believe this, but he does. And he says that he's gonna go fight Eirika and kill her. And he's like, "Tell me where she is." And Volter's like, "Oh no, I shouldn't." But she's in Johanna right now. That sort of thing. Yeah. So then we cut back to Eirika, and they're having a little bit of a conversation. La Rochelle is here. And La Rochelle sort of lets slip. They're just kind of talking. We're like, we got to get to Johanna so that we can warn them about the sacred stones. And Eirika's like, how do you know about the sacred stones? And La Rochelle says some shit. What does she say? Oh no, I didn't write down the line here. I think she said like the darkness whispered it to me on the window. That's something that Odin would say. What do you say? She says she has some funny line here. Let me look it up. Okay, she says, the wind whispered to me in the night. And And according to the Gentle Breeze, there are knights riding this way from Rouston, even as we speak. So there are going to be reinforcements coming from Rouston. We know that she has some connection to Rouston. I believe she's referred to herself as the Sacred Light of Rouston or something like that. So we're starting to put two and two together that she may be some sort of high-ranking official in Rouston. But we don't know much more than that at this time. And so we start the map. We're here in Hamel Canyon. We've encountered Grotto's forces. I think they're like trying to invade Johanna, and they're doing it pretty successfully. They've cut their way through to the palace, I think, or they're working on that part. Kalik has gone on ahead to help with that endeavor, and he leaves these guys behind to help deal with Eirika. I think they know that Rouston is on the way, right? Word has it the Knights of Rouston are riding from the north. They're mine. I can trust this mess to your capable hands. So I'm pretty sure Kalik is just fucking lying here, because the Rouston Knights show up anyway, and the next time we see Kalik, he's at the palace. So I'm pretty sure that he's just lying. Either that or he changed his mind about where he was going to go, or maybe he lost and had to retreat. Who knows? Either way, this doesn't really impact much about the chapter. All that matters is that we have to either break through their forces or wait until the Rouston Knights show up. So this is a defend map on paper. We have to last, I believe, 12 turns, which is not particularly difficult. That's not entirely true. This map can be a little bit tricky. I do like this map. I think it's probably one of the better ones on Eirika route. It is defend map. It is again ostensibly a defend map. I say on paper because you can also end it early by killing the boss, but there are like legitimate reasons that you don't necessarily want to do that, especially not right away. So I do kind of like that. There's incentive to actually play it straight instead of just going for the quick and easy boss kill, but you can do that if you want to. So Amelia is here. As I mentioned last time, you can recruit Amelia here if you didn't manage it in Chapter 9. You would never want to do this on purpose. The only way that you would be in this situation is either if you didn't want to get her second, or if you did want to get her second speed wing, or if you just like fucked up getting her in Chapter 9 and didn't feel like resetting. Because everything I said about Amelia in the last episode applies here as well, except even more so. The enemies are getting even stronger. They're even, it's even more difficult to use Amelia. Although, of course, I guess the tower is still an option if you want to take that route. But, for the most part, there's really no reason why you wouldn't have just recruited her in Chapter 9 if you're actually invested in using her. But I suppose that is a possibility. So you would do so now. I'm not going to talk about her in gameplay again. Just go listen to that past episode. So the main thing about this chapter is that if you're trying to play it as a defend map, it's not super hard. There are some enemies here that like swarm your position, and they're mostly pretty easy to take out. But there are some really strong enemies here that we're encountering. These are like the first enemies. These aren't technically the first promoted enemies that we're seeing. There was like the sniper in Chapter 9. There's a few in some of the other chapters. I think there's been some promoted monsters. But for the most part, we have not seen like regular promoted enemies, especially not ones this strong. There are rangers here, and the rangers are really scary because they're very, very fast. It is very difficult to consistently double them, and in fact, a lot of your units might actually get doubled by them, which is pretty obnoxious. These are some of the hardest units to deal with. We see them again in Chapter 15, and probably other chapters later, but the ones in Chapter 15 come to mind as being particularly difficult. If you're trying to like break away to go kill Volter early on, those guys are going to stand in your way. So it's a little bit of a difficult situation to get around them, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's next episode. For this chapter, all you got to know is that they're really tough. They have really high mobility. They can attack from a distance. And the only way that I was able to reliably kill them, I had to gang up on them with like 3 or 4 guys, or Eirika, I don't know if Eirika doubled them, but at the very least, she did like a substantial amount of very accurate damage with her rapier, which was really good. So she was very helpful. She actually might have been able to double them. My Eirika has capped speed, or at least she did when I stopped playing Eirika mode. So she has capped speed. So she was doing really, really well against these guys, which is pretty good. One of the most, I guess, she levels up speed very consistently, so I guess she's like a fairly reliable counter to these guys as long as you can keep her out of danger once you actually have her attack. So 5 chapters into the turn, yep, that's right. 5 turns into the chapter, we get Cormag showing up on the battlefield as a reinforcement. He is an enemy unit, and we can recruit him by talking to him with Eirika. And really, all that boils down to is, it's a very quick resolution of this whole thing. Cormag's like, "You killed my brother," and Eirika's like, "No, you didn't," or "No, I didn't," and Cormag believes her. I think like it's fairly believable that Cormag would believe her right away, because she like quotes Glenn at him, and it's something similar to something that Glenn said to Cormag, and Cormag recognizes that, so he's like, yeah, no, that seems believable, and then immediately realizes that if she didn't kill Glenn, then that means that Volter must have lied to him and probably killed Glenn himself. So now he wants revenge on Volter, and he's going to travel with Eirika in order to do that. So that's the context for him joining in Eirika route. I like it a little bit less than the context for him joining an Ephraim route, but I think it still works overall. It's pretty good. A few more turns in, I believe it's like turn 9 or turn 10 or something like that. And this is something that the game telegraphs. We know that this is going to happen. We find out that Pablo is sort of fleeing. Okay, let me back up a little bit. Frelia heard about what's happening in Carcino. They attacked. Pablo was defeated and driven out of Carcino, which, by the way, the Frelian army is like fucking like kicking ass. Every time that they have a problem, they just send the Frelian army at it, and they take care of business, which is pretty funny. And Pablo is now fleeing Carcino in the direction of Johanna in an attempt to meet up with Grotto's forces and hopefully combine together. So the game makes us aware of that, and I think they mentioned it a couple times that Pablo is going to be coming from behind. So I believe it's about 9 or 10 turns into the map. He shows up, and he is pretty strong. The most notable thing about him is that he has a Purge Tome, or maybe it's Bolting, something like that. It's a long-range siege magic. And he also moves. He's not a stationary enemy. So he has that. He effectively has 16 attack range, which can be very devastating, especially if you're using like Tethys, or if you recruited Amelia this chapter and are trying to keep her alive. Like that can be really bad for you. So I would highly recommend, keeping an eye out for that, making sure that you're aware of when he's going to join so you don't get jump scared, and keeping your guys out of range of Pablo's attack range. Thankfully, he doesn't they're not same turn reinforcements, so you have a turn to get out of the way if you need to. The major thing about Pablo showing up, other than that he's kind of hard, is that some of the guys that he spawns with have stealable items. I think there's a couple, but I think the most notable one is a body ring, which is one of the few body rings we get in this game. I don't actually remember if there are any others that you get outside of like secret shops. I'm going to check on that. Okay, so you do get one as as one of the desert items in chapter 15. So that's noteworthy. And then you get one stealable one from Eirika route and one stealable one from Ephraim route. So you'll only get 2 over the course of the game, but there are 3 total if you count both routes. What I eventually did was I tried to steal something from Pablo's guys, but I didn't manage to do it. So it was unfortunately. I actually don't know. I had Colm as an assassin, so I actually don't know if I would have even been able to do it. Was that what I was trying to do? I think it was. That's weird. I don't know. I guess I just blanked on that, or I don't remember. Maybe it's droppable? No, you have to steal it for sure. So I don't know. I guess I wouldn't have been able to get it anyway. But anyway, I tried and I failed. Pablo was about to kill my guys, so I killed the boss and ended the chapter at like turn 11 or turn 12. It was towards the end of the map. And the Rousted Knights show up. I don't know what the fuck happens to Pablo. Presumably the Rousted Knights just kill them all. So Pablo's good. Pablo's dead. He's not in the story anymore. He never comes up again. It's at this point that we get the reveal that... Did I not write this down? It's a good thing I remembered to talk about this, because I don't think this is in my notes. We find out that La Rochelle is the Princess of Rouston, which we might have been able to figure out pretty easily without this being explicitly fed to us. But that's fine. I mean, obviously they were going to have to not rip the Band-Aid off. That makes it sound weird. They were going to have to let the cat out of the bag at some point. But they definitely were leaning into it pretty heavily. So I don't think anyone's going to be super surprised by this. But it's a cool little reveal. I like La Rochelle. I think she's a fun character. You also get a little bit of money here. It's not a lot. I think it's like 5,000 gold or something. And right at the end of this chapter, before we move on to the next one, we are informed that Grotto's forces are being led by Prince Leon. So this is the first time that Eirika is faced with the prospect of encountering Leon since this whole thing started. This entire time, she's thought, like, what is Leon up to? Does he approve of all this? Is he against it? Is he speaking up against his father? She didn't know. Now she knows that he's leading these troops. So at the very least, he's complicit. And this is where she's going to have to face the reality of, like, what he actually thinks about all this, what his role in all this is. And I think that that's a good moment for her. I know she doesn't say that much about it, but I think she's like, you can imagine what's going on internally, and try to empathize a little bit with her there. Last but not least, we have chapter 14, which is called Queen of the White Dunes. So at this point, Grotto has officially basically taken over Johanna. They have invaded the castle and successfully dethroned the queen. So they're on their way to see if they can help defeat Grotto and drive them out. On the way, Eirika has a flashback of Leon talking with her. And what we find out, this is something we already kind of knew from the previous flashbacks that we had seen, but Leon really, really has confidence issues. He's sparring with Eirika, and Eirika beats him. And he's just, like, really down on himself about that. I'm a crown prince, and I've been bested in sword combat by a woman, and he's really beating himself up. He's like, he's saying I'm pathetic, and he's being, like, really matter of fact about it too. It's not like he's, sad or crying or, like, viscerally upset. He's just, like, saying it like it's any other day, which I think really, like, the tone of this writing carries through really strong here. I really like how much it feels like this is a very routine thought that Leon has in his head. Maybe this is something that he even says to Eirika fairly often. But at the very least, you can tell that this is something that he thinks about himself on the regular. And Eirika tells him that being a ruler isn't all about strength. You also need to have compassion, which is something that Leon has in spades. And she says, someday your compassion will surely save us all, which is a really good line that I like a lot, especially in the context of Ephraim mode. Going back to Ephraim mode being the better characterization route for Leon, but this line coming from Eirika mode is very funny to me, because in I guess it, like, it applies to both, but I think especially in Ephraim route. In a way, not getting too ahead of ourselves, in a way, his compassion killed them all. Like, he's started this entire war basically because of his compassion to try to save his people, which is it's just like, man, I really like Leon, and the story is so good. I wish that I could say that Eirika route, I wish that I could say that you could do Eirika route and not be missing out on significant content, but I just don't think that that's true. But anyway, so we cut to a POV on the inside of Johanna Castle, where we find out that there was a guy named Carlisle, and this guy Carlisle is really sucks, and I hate him a lot. So he was like a top general in Johanna or something like that. I think he was basically Johanna's version of Seth, and he was so in love with the queen that he decided that he was going to betray the queen to Grotto, and make, like, okay, what does he say? So she asked, like, did you really think that this would make me happy? You're betraying your country, you're betraying your people. And he says, I don't care about my country or my people, I just care about you. So I guess his plan is to, like, force her to marry him after everybody in Johanna dies or something like that. I don't know what this guy's plan is. This guy's the biggest fucking idiot ever. And of course, like, I'm getting ahead of myself, but his mayor fucking dies, because of course she did, bro. You're working with Grotto. Like, what do you expect? Yeah, this guy's not very fun. I don't like him very much. And I think he's a contender for the biggest simp in all of Fire Emblem, or at the very least the stupidest simp in all of Fire Emblem. It does have a line here that's very funny, because Kalik basically holds Ismair at gunpoint, and says, you're gonna show me where the sacred stone is. I need to destroy the sacred stone. And Carlisle is like, no, don't hurt her, don't lay a hand on her, and Calic is like, I'm not like that freak Vaulter, I'm kind to women. That Calic's a funny guy, very funny guy. Okay, so Renak is here. We get a cutscene of Renak talking to some guy. I guess he's been hired on as a mercenary, specifically to open the chests and loot the palace, basically. And so he's here, and you can recruit him. He's a recruitable enemy. He just goes around and opens the chests and shit. We can recruit him by either talking to him with Eirika, and if you do so, he will say, I'll work for you if you pay me 10,000 gold. And he's another character in that archetype of, we'll join you, but you have to pay for them first. Alongside like Beowulf and Hugh, Farina, there's a few characters like that. I don't think there was one in FE5. But there is an alternative option that you do not have to pay for him to join you. If you instead talk to him with La Rochelle, then she will simply demand that he comes with her, and he tries to push back. He's like, no, I don't want to travel with you anymore, you're psychotic. And La Rochelle's like, I can't, like, well, too bad, come anyway. And he's like, fine, I guess. And it's really funny, and I really like their dynamic. They're so good. I like Renak a fair bit. He's a fun character. In terms of gameplay, Renak is a pretty interesting unit, just because like he feels like he should be kind of good, but it just falls flat. Like he's a rogue, he's a pre-promoted rogue, so you don't need he doesn't need a lockpick to open locks, which is pretty nice, but you can buy chest keys, and door keys are like, doors aren't common enough to really justify needing a rogue when you could just like use a lockpick, or use the door keys that you get over the course of the game, or just let thieves open doors for you, because that happens sometimes too. Or just don't open doors. There's no doors that you're required to open after this chapter. I don't think. There's like a couple in the Rene Castle map, chapter 16, and then there's some in like the final chapter that have some chests behind them, and that's it. So I don't like, and there's not even like particularly good items. So it's not really worth it. And then his combat isn't exactly good either. So yeah, he's a little bit lackluster, but he's certainly usable, if you want to use him. He's a fast sword character. Unfortunately, he doesn't get any of the same benefits that Assassin or Swordmaster do, or more realistically, I guess, any of the benefits that Swordmaster does. Assassin doesn't really get much in the way of benefits either, admittedly. But yeah, he's fine. He's a like acceptable quality unit. Certainly no Sala or Dusel, I'll tell you that much. Even Inez. Is Inez better than him? He might be. Inez is like better at killing things, but being an archer is just so fucking bad, man. Could go either way on that one. So this chapter is pretty good. It is a seas map, and it's pretty straightforward. If you wanted to end the map relatively early, you are able to just kind of beeline for the throne room, and take out Carlisle pretty quickly. Now, of course, the appeal of a map like this is that you're going around room to room getting chests. And some of the chest items here are really good. There's like another energy ring. There's a guiding ring. There's like some really good items in this chapter. And there's like fucking 8 chests here. There's a lot. So you definitely want to go around and get most of these items. And I mean, even if you're playing blind, you don't know what the items are, then you're just going to do it anyway, just to be safe. And the main thing that I don't like about this map is that it takes a while just to go around and do that. It feels like, to me, by the end, I had cleared out all the enemies, like, pretty early on in the map. They're not that many enemies, and they're not super strong. So it didn't really feel like I had much to do in the back half of the map. It was a lot of running Renak around, and opening chests and stuff, which is like fine. It didn't take too long. I did also spend a little bit of time grinding Lewyn in this chapter, so that probably contributed to it as well. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad map by any means. I think that they probably could have used a little bit more of a way to make the middle stretch of the map feel a little bit better, because as it stands, it kind of feels a little bit dull. There are some reinforcements, but they come pretty early. There's some reinforcements that are turn-based and some reinforcements that are zone-based. And the reinforcements that are zone-based are actually very, very easy to never encounter. So Yeah, I think it's a little bit dull. But for the most part, it's like a fine map. I don't think it's amazing or anything. This is the map that Drano said was maybe their favorite in the game, which I can respect that. But it just didn't really do it for me. Um, I think that like I split my army up, but I only split it up in two. There's also a third way that you can go that feels a little bit like I didn't know if I didn't want to split my army up that much. I didn't have that many chess keys to go around because I forgot to buy like a ton because I knew I got Renak in this chapter. I didn't think it mattered, but I guess I wasn't thinking about like the implications of Renak being the only fucking guy that could open all these chests, and there's like so many of them. They're so scattered around. So yeah, I was a little bit bored as this map started to go on, but if you play it a little bit more efficiently, if you make sure to buy enough chess keys, I could see this being a pretty fun, snappy map where your army splits up into 3 groups and gets all the chests and then reconvenes in the middle there. So that's something, I guess. There is an element that I really like, which is a breakable wall that connects the left side of the map to the right side of the map, which is really nice for traversing. And I utilized that a lot. That was really good. Really nice piece of map design there that I appreciated. This boss is super duper strong. He is a sword master on a throne, so he's very dodgy and he's very fast, so he doubles a lot of my guys. I tried to proc silencer on him a few times. Unfortunately, it was not working out. I wasn't really like doing it with the hopes of procking silencer. I knew that was probably pretty unrealistic. But like Colm was one of the few units that I had that wasn't getting doubled and had like pretty reliable accuracy on him. So I figured it was fine. It did work out pretty well. He had like because he's a swordmaster, he also has crit rate. It's not as much as an FE6, thankfully. And his wind edge, which is the first time we're seeing a physical ranged sword in this game, maybe even the whole series, but definitely in this game. This is the only place in the game that has one. It does physical damage, I think, but it is pretty like not super strong, and it cannot crit at range. So you're safe from that at the very least. But he has a crit bonus, which means that he if you're trying to fight him at melee range with your more accurate weapons like your iron weapons, there's a very good chance that you just get crit, which can be very scary. I did manage to do it fairly reliably. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was a little bit scary. And then one last thing before we move on from this map, there is a secret shop here. The member card actually comes in Renak's inventory, so you need to recruit him in order to get access to it, or I guess you could steal it, but he doesn't drop it, so you would definitely need to get it from him somehow besides just killing him. The secret shop here sells some decent items. There's only 2 in the entire game. And this is definitely the better one of the 2. So I definitely, like, if you're saving your money for a secret shop, I would spend some of it here. Unfortunately, it's before you get the silver card. We get the silver card in the very next map. So it would have been nice to be able to wait until we get that silver card, but alas, it is not to be. Let me just double check what items are in the secret shop. I remember them being good. Yeah, okay, so this is interesting. It's actually different in the localized version of the game. I don't really know why they did that, but they did. You can buy some stat boosters, not a ton, but energy rings and angelic robes in the Japanese version of the game. But in the English version of the game, they took the stat boosters out. There's no boots. Even in the Japanese version, they do not let you buy boots here, which is very unfortunate. Justice for Boots Shop. We need Boot Shop again. And then the main thing that the English version of the game has, I think. Yeah, actually, these are added in the English version, so the Japanese version doesn't have these. The Japanese version only has killer bows, but the US version, and the PAL version, I should say, both of them have killer weapons of all types. There's killing edges, killing lances, killer axes, and killer bows, as well as physics staves, and also every type of promotion item that you will need. So this is a good opportunity. I guess, if you're okay with waiting... Actually, no, you can't... Okay, the other secret shop isn't until way, way, way later. But yeah, so this would be a good opportunity to decide like who you have left that you still need to promote, and look into like what promotion items you're gonna get in the coming chapters, and if it's worth it to maybe buy one here. I wouldn't spend too much money here because obviously they're very expensive. They're 10,000 gold because you don't have the killer or you don't have the silver card yet. So we can't exactly blow a ton of our money, especially if you had to pay for Renak. Yeah, definitely, be a little bit conservative with your money. I spent a shitload of money here on killer weapons. So that's what I did. And I was broke by the end of this chapter, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, that's nice. And I like that the secret shop there. Secret shop is always fun. It's interesting because going to the secret shop actually enters you into the reinforcement zone, the one that I said earlier that was really easy to avoid. You can't avoid it if you want to actually visit the secret shop. However, realistically, if you're visiting the secret shop at the end of the chapter, you're probably, like, those reinforcements spawn, like, a pretty far ways away. They're not going to be anywhere near you if you're in the throne room, so you don't got to worry about it that much. And that's where the chapter ends. So we cut to Kalik trying to get the Sacred Stone's location out of Ismaire. And Kalik is trying to get her to give up the location of the Secret Stone, of the Sacred Stone. Ismaire, eventually it comes out that Ismaire has it on her, and Kalik's like, just give it to me, because if you do, I'll let you live, and if you don't, I'm just going to kill you and take it anyway. So what is the point of, standing your ground like this? But Ismaire says, no, absolutely not. And so Kalik does exactly what he was planning to do, and kills her. And then takes the Sacred Stone and destroys it. Leon does try to speak up here to prevent him from doing this. He basically, he's like, yeah, Kalik, you can't do this. But Kalik says, my orders come from higher than you. You wouldn't start disobeying his word now, would you? And I think, it's obvious that he's referring to the Emperor, Vigard. But I think headcanon is really the best word for it, right? Because it's not evidenced at all. There's like zero evidence for it. It's completely speculative. But what I really liked, I mentioned this with Valter at the beginning of the game, but I really like to imagine, because we know for a fact that Reeve, later on in the game, knows everything about what's going on with the Demon King. He's in on the whole thing. He knows that Leon is possessed by the Demon King, and he's working for the Demon King. And I can't imagine that Kalik and Valter also know. We never find out any evidence that they do, that's for sure. But it's fun to imagine, does Kalik know that, the Demon King is telling him to do this? Would he care either way? Would he still want to do this just to get access to Johanna? He might just go along with it still. Who knows? And Valter is fucking insane, so who knows what he would do? So it's fun to imagine what Kalik could mean here, even though the implication is very obviously supposed to be that it's Vigard. The fact that he never says Vigard's name or says your father or the Emperor, I don't know. It gives me a little bit of room for speculation. Maybe the Japanese script, it says something different. If that's the case, then that's whatever. I'm not hung up on this or anything. It's just like a fun idea that I have. But if it's contradicted somewhere, then so be it. But based on the English script, it seems like it could be possible. And I think that's neat that we're able to speculate on that a little bit. So Leon, Kalik leaves basically and says, well, I'm getting out of here. Leon also leaves, but instead of leaving immediately, he teleports in front of Eirika, and just starts acting really weird. He's speaking in ways that, make it difficult for Eirika to understand him. He seems to have some kind of headache. He's crying out in pain and isn't able to properly communicate his thoughts. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was during the Kalik conversation. The Leon conversation, the Eirika conversation with Leon, is pretty straightforward. He is very, he is speaking coherently. He, is talking directly to Eirika. And based on what we know from later on in the game, he's just completely fucking with her right now. He's being, he's entirely trying to manipulate her, by making her believe that he's still in there somewhere, which is unfortunate. That is happening, and she of course buys it hook, line, and sinker. Why would she believe anything differently? But yeah, worth mentioning. And then Leon teleports away, and the conversation's over. Eirika and company find Queen Ismaire. In fact, they reported to Eirika, hey, we found Ismaire, and then they all left. And that's when Leon showed up to talk to Eirika, so they were alone for that conversation. But then after Leon leaves, Eirika follows them into the room where Ismaire is laying dying. And she has a little bit of a conversation with whoever before she passes away. And this is where we find out something interesting. If Joshua is alive, I mean, I guess we find it out regardless because she does name drop him here, even if she's dead. But if Joshua is alive, then we find out that Joshua is Ismair's child. He is the Prince of Johanna, and he comes to her, and they have a nice little heartfelt conversation before she dies. And she, in her dying moments, she gives Eirika, or Joshua, I guess, the sacred twins of Johanna. So these are our first examples of legendary weapons. There are 10 total in this game if you count the ones that are exclusive to the Lords. And these are the first 2 that we get. We get 2 per country, basically. And for Johanna, we get the S-rank sword Adholma and the S-rank Animatome Excalibur. It's a different weapon type for all of them. All of the 8 different weapon types are covered. There's a sword, a lance, an axe, a bow, a staff, dark, light, and anima magic. And then the ones specific to Eirika and Ephraim are obviously a sword and a lance, respectively. So this is the first time that we're getting these, and anybody can use them. They're not specific to anybody. You just need to have high enough anima affinity or sword affinity. And I'm going to be using Marissa for Adholma, and I'm going to be using Lewyn for Excalibur when we eventually get there. I like to try to find someone to use each of the legendary weapons, even the ones that aren't as good, which we'll talk about. There's a couple that aren't that great, but it's something that I like to do when I play through Sacred Stones, is try to find somebody to use all of the legendary weapons. It makes it suck a little bit when you get dark, when we talk about the dark tome, because there's only 2 possible uses of that in the entire game, and it's also not effective against monsters for some reason, which is unfortunate, but whatever. Anyway, so regarding this whole plot line with Joshua, Ismair dies. He vows that he's gonna, take up leadership of the country or whatever. And he goes on this whole thing about how, he left because he wanted to be a better ruler by getting to know the people well, but he realizes that he shouldn't have done that, and that he wants to, make it up to his mother. He should never have left his mother's side. He was a fool, etc., etc. And it's obvious, especially to anybody who's played the game, but even if you just heard about it through osmosis, this is a very, very abridged version of what happens with Lewyn in FE4. It's like almost 1-to-1. Lewyn's mom doesn't die in FE4, like, on screen. Presumably she dies after the Empire takes over, but like she doesn't die in Chapter 4 of FE4. They don't have a moment like that. But it's the same idea where Lewyn went, to try to, it's, he was making excuses of like, oh, well, I don't want to get in the way of my uncles. I don't even want to be the king, so I'm just going to let them have it. And basically turning away from his birthright and his responsibility, because he was bored. Me, when I have to abandon my entire country because I'm bored. That was Lewyn in FE4. And what I love about that, and this just hits really personally for me. I'm not expecting it to be exactly the same, but this really hits personally for me because in the aftermath of my podcast playthrough of FE4, Lewyn became not just my favorite character in that game, but also my favorite character in the entire series. Lewyn still currently is my favorite Fire Emblem character, because of that playthrough, and where I really deep dive into his character and like the different layers of Lewyn's responsibility and how he turns away from it and how he gets closer to it over the course of both Gen 1 and Gen 2, I think is so interesting. And obviously they were never going to replicate that same thing. Lewyn is a principal character in that game, so unless they wanted to make Joshua a main important character who can't die, then this was never going to hit those same heights. I get that. But to have one of the best stories that they've ever told in one of these games, and to boil it down to like one conversation and maybe like a little bit of like in his supports and stuff, I don't think this ever comes up in his supports because all of his support partners, or most of them anyway, joined before this cutscene, so they can't spoil that he's the king of Johanna, or the Prince of Johanna. So it just feels like they were going for something here and like a cheap reference, and it just doesn't land in the same way or even close. I like Joshua. I think he's cool. I do think he's a really good character, and I like what they do here with him. But it just feels a little bit like, as someone who's such a big fan of that story, I wish that they had given it a little bit more time to cook. Maybe have like maybe have it tied to the route split, right? Because Eirika, this is the only route where we get this information on Ephraim route. Even if Joshua lives and gets all the way to chapter 15 and fights Calic, none of this stuff ever comes up. We never find out anything about who Joshua is on Ephraim route, which is, I mean, already kind of weird. But like, that's fine. You know, they're committing to making a minor character. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But maybe once you commit to picking Eirika route, they start to give Joshua more screen time if he's still alive. It doesn't have to be a lot. You know, it could be like a cutscene here or there if he's still alive. I just like, I don't think that this lands nearly as well as it could have, even with the concession that they weren't gonna give Joshua like a lot of time in the spotlight. Even if you want to make that argument, there's ways they could have done it better than this. I'm not a huge fan of it, in comparison, and that's like that's hard. You know, I get it might be tempting to be like, oh well, they're doing a different thing. It's obviously not, you can't compare them 1-to-1, and I get I can't compare them 1-to-1, but at the same time, it is literally a direct reference to FE4. So it's hard for me to not compare the two. You know, like they're so obviously trying to replicate what that game did. So I don't know. Call me a hater if you want. I'm not being a hater. Explicitly, I really like the scene and I really like Joshua. I just think they could have done it a million times better. That's all I'm trying to say. So there is a little bit of a rush here to get out of the castle because they apparently started burning down the palace, and they all get out safely. You know, the palace is in flames, but they all make it out in time, and they're like, huh, well, I mean, that was a stressful situation, but we all made it out, so I guess their plan didn't work. And it turns out that, yes, it did, because the plan was not to burn them down in the palace, although, of course, I guess if any of them died, that would have been a good consolation prize. But the plan was to make it so that they could not hole up in Jahana Palace, because now they're getting attacked on all sides by the Grotto army. And that's where the chapter ends. Next time we're gonna resolve that. Eirika having to fight out in the open desert with two armies of Jahana or two armies of Grotto at the same time. So that's gonna be cool. Well, we're not gonna pick up on that next time though, because now chapter 15, which is the next chapter, is where Eirika and Ephraim routes reconverge. So next time we're going to be jumping over to the other timeline where we picked Ephraim, and we're going to be doing chapters 9, 10, and 11 of Ephraim route. So look forward to that. In terms of my favorite chapter this time around, I kind of like 14. I kind of like 13. I think it's probably 13. I like the fact that it's a kill boss map. Because and the boss is not a slouch either. The boss is pretty strong. So, if you want to go out of your way to kill the boss, you can definitely do so, but it's not trivially easy. There are some kill boss maps that are like so fucking easy that it's not even worth playing them normally. But the boss of this chapter and like the path to get up to him is like not super duper easy to get past. So, and then there's also like both a recruitable character and multiple stealable items that incentivize you to play the map normally, which can be pretty fun. And I think Pablo coming out with the fucking... I think if Pablo didn't move, I think it would be better. Because at this point, none of the siege enemies that we've encountered, I don't think any that we encounter for the rest of the game, except, no, maybe the Gorgons, but very few of them actually move. So it's weird that they decided to go that direction, but it is what it is, I guess. But I think if Pablo had been stationary, I would have liked it slightly more. But I do think Chapter 13 is a pretty good take on the formula of a defend map also being a kill boss map, because it's not super easy to just trivialize. Partially because we don't have warp yet, but that's what we call foreshadowing, because we're going to encounter that in a later chapter. But for now, we don't got to worry about it. Anyway, I was even the other... Yeah, Chapter 12. Chapter 12 fucking sucks. So it's definitely 13. But I can see the argument for 14 being good as well. I can respect why people would like Chapter 14. It just didn't really do it for me, personally. Chapter 13, is it better than Chapter 9, Eirika route? And I think, honestly, yeah, I like Chapter 13. I think that 9 is also fun. No, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with 9. I think 9 has a lot of really good stuff going on as well. But it's pretty close. I think that 13 is a really good contender, for one of the better maps in the game. I really like it. Okay, and I already talked about what we're doing next time. I guess so. The next episode is actually going to be an SSS episode. We're going to be doing the entirety of Garrick's mercenary band. That'll be, I believe, the only 5-character SSS episode for this game. So it'll be a little bit of a longer one. But yeah, so that's it from me for today. Let's check on news. Oh, well, there is one thing I didn't even have to look at fucking Serenus Forest for. The Nintendo Switch 2 Direct came and went. And no new Fire Emblem games. However, and I do think this is fairly significant. I'm not trying to be like, facetious or whatever, or sarcastic, I guess. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is coming to the Nintendo Switch via the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, which if you have the expanded pass, it is if you have the expansion pass, yeah, there we go. Then they're going to be adding GameCube games exclusively to Switch 2. Did I talk about this? I feel like I've talked about this. Was the last episode after the Switch 2 Direct? Fuck, I don't remember. I'm saying this out loud, and I'm like, this sounds really familiar to something that I said previously. Did I talk about this last episode? Man, am I going fucking insane? When was that Switch Direct? That was April 2nd. Yeah, I think there was an episode between now and then. Okay, well, sorry guys, you don't get to hear me talk about Path of Radiance getting added to the eShop again, or to the Nintendo Switch Online. But yeah, I'm really happy that it's getting added, because it's nice that it'll be accessible to people who don't want to pay an arm and a leg for the physical copy of the game, or who either can't or don't feel comfortable with piracy and emulation. That's it really for news. In terms of shit that I have played and watched recently, I finished the Gundam OVA called Stardust Memory, which I liked overall. I had some issues with it, especially at the end. I thought that it was like kind of like it ended on like a kind of a bad note. I think there was some cool action in there. And like I like a lot of the characters, but unfortunately, I don't like the way it treats some of its principal characters towards the end. I think a lot of the ideas and stuff that it was tackling in the first half of the series got sort of got moved away from, which is unfortunate. I'm dancing around the elephant in the room. Which is that the female characters in the show are pretty well written, and really fleshed out and interesting. Well, maybe not fleshed out, but like they're very enjoyable, fun characters, for the first half of the series. And then as the series goes on, one of them starts to become really poorly written, and the other one that I really like just gets kind of off-screened. Not like she doesn't die off-screen. I just mean that she just doesn't get to do very much. She's not around very often. She's not even in the last few episodes, I don't think, at all. So that's unfortunate, and I was like, kind of like, I just happened to be on the Annie list page, and you guys will never guess. Apparently, the director for the first half of that OVA was a woman, and maybe that has something to do with the fact that the female characters were written better. I'm just saying, I don't know. Could be anything. Maybe they were just having a bad day in the writer's room on when they wrote the entire fucking back half of that series. But it's fine. I still like the first half a lot, and the second half I don't hate. Even the last couple episodes I don't think are like terrible. I think they're like kind of bad, but they're not like awful. And then like everything leading up to that point I enjoy fairly thoroughly. I finally got around to adding the movies as well that I saw in there, Char's Counterattack and Gundam F91. So those are both pretty good as well. F91 is like forgettable. I should rewatch it, but I don't remember much about it. Science Future, Dr. Stone Science Future, the first part of allegedly the last season of Dr. Stone. I don't know if this is actually going to be the last season. That's what I've heard. I don't know how they're going to get everything wrapped up in a neat bow, but they're going to try, I guess. I really liked it. I really like the new villain. Dr. Zeno is awesome, and I like some of the moments that a lot of the characters get in this arc. I think it's pretty fun. And then as far as games go, I haven't really played anything. Let me just double check my backlog to make sure. I've been playing Radiant Dawn. I've been playing. I'm very close to finishing that Radiant Dawn playthrough. Actually, I'm on the tower, and I'm pretty close to being. Yeah, so I just started the tower. I'm on the first map of the tower. I tried it like once and then I got killed, so I had to reset and stopped. But yeah, it's going pretty well on that front. And then I've just been continuing to play Kirby Planet Robobot, which has been really fun. I've been enjoying that. I mean, it's Kirby, you know, Kirby is Kirby. But that's really all that I have to say about that. And then I haven't played anything else new for a while, so I'm gonna hop on a couple of new games soon, and I'll update you guys with how those go. But yeah, so that's it from me. And I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Make sure to answer who you think the biggest simp is in Fire Emblem by tweeting at I'm a Melee Kirby or blue skying at I'm a Melee Kirby on Blue Sky, or emailing turnwheelpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, see you next time. Bye-bye.